Guru Nation, welcome to episode 196 of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru.
I'm so excited.
Chris is super excited. This is our second one today because we did a webinar earlier.
Uh-huh.
You are looking at the first and second place in our fantasy football league this year.
That's true.
Actually, we're tied for first, but technically you're first and I'm second. You have a few more points.
Yep.
That'll all change in week 4.
Probably.
Okay, so this topic is about 196. It's about budgets, contracts, overhead. What did you write down yesterday? Is that what?
Overhead, that's all I wrote.
So break it down. Give me context because I know what overhead is, but what are you trying to say?
Well, we have a client who was asking, how do I invoice for overhead? And I had to explain that this is not an invoiceable item. This is something that is included in your patient visits.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you might see a contract at some point, I never have, in which you do invoice for overhead. Actually, it would make sense from a CRO or a sponsor to design a contract that way, really. Right?
So break it down more.
But that's not how it works.
Break it down more.
So overhead is reimbursement for things that are not itemized within the budget, right? In order to conduct a trial. And these things are rent, electricity, any number of things you can think of along those lines. And a standard overhead in research is, I would say, somewhere between 25 and 35%. Okay. Most often you're going to see either 25 or 30% reimbursement for overhead. And the overhead is paid on the assessment costs, right? Like running an EKG machine or things of that nature, right? The associated electricity. And just anything in the patient visit that requires overhead, right? You're not going to get overhead typically on reimbursement for investigator time, but you will get overhead for the things the investigator does for the study, right? So overhead just is part of the patient visit. It is not an invoiceable item as, say, a startup fee is, right?
Now I've negotiated a few budgets recently, but I haven't done it like as a regular thing like you for a while.
Right.
I'm gonna probably start getting back into it a little with our clinic in Costa Mesa, right?
Okay.
Right. Not all of them, but a few, just to stay relevant, stay current.
Understand what the current trends are.
Yes, because when I used to negotiate, I sometimes got 40%. Are they still doing that?
It depends. Really, what a budget, really what it boils down to, in terms of what you can get, is when there's a CRO, the middleman, the sponsor gives them a max, typically, right? Mm-hmm. This is the max we're willing to pay. And anything above and beyond that, you need our approval, right? So, overhead, yeah, you might be able to get 80% overhead if you're not asking for much anywhere else, right? So long as that's not exceeding the max.
Right.
However, if you ask for 80% overhead, they'd want justification. And you might be able to get 80% overhead along with other things as well if you can position yourself in a way that seems.
But have you ever seen 80% overhead?
Oh, of course not. Of course not. Rarely do I get 40%.
Right. 40 is even tough to get now, and our policies is 40%.
Sure, and when they ask for our overhead policy, typically what I'll see is they'll come back and be willing to pay 30, maybe 35.
Right.
Not 40. Every once in a while I'll see 40, but it's not typical. And
right.
Again, that's dependent upon what you're getting in terms of your line item costs, right? If you're getting max everywhere else, yeah, they're not going to give you 40% overhead, typically.
I went to the Viva Summit, and there were a lot of university folks there, and a lot of mega clinics. Actually, 2 mega clinics there, but mostly these like university people. And one of the benefits that we have as private sites is we can say our overhead policy is whatever we want to say.
Sure.
With these institutions, they have real overhead policies, and that money is actually getting spent for those things that they
Sure.
put in their overhead.
Sure.
For us, it's just you have to have an overhead policy just because everyone asks for it.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that you have to actually live by that overhead policy at your site.
Right.
So there's an arbitrage there where you can make more. Now people don't. Do you know?
However, yes, I agree. There is an arbitrage there that you can make more, but legitimately, I would say you probably are running 25%.
Yeah, everyone is.
Right.
We don't get. This actually came up also. I should have taken better notes, like Seneca said. So for more podcast banter.
Yeah, love banter.
We love banter. More podcast banter. We sites don't get paid. The guy how about the interview, Dr. Kingsley. He's a big site advocate. Okay? He says sites don't get paid for 90% of the work they do.
I think that's a little hyperbole, but I do agree they don't get paid for a lot of work they do. And I've tried these arguments, but they just don't buy you anything.
Right, because they say it's the cost of doing business.
Right, and I mean,
but then they expect email answers as
Right.
soon as they send it out.
Right.
Right? What else are some things that we don't get paid for as sites, but we're expected to do?
Well, in my opinion, the number one item is recruitment. Number one, by far.
But you can argue you get paid for it because that's...
No. What you're getting paid for is the line item cost, right?
What you get paid for is the data you're producing.
You're getting paid for performing that EKG. You're getting paid for performing that physical, right? You're not getting paid for recruiting patients or retaining patients, right?
Right. But you have every incentive to do so because otherwise
So you can
there's
get
no
more data.
revenue.
Sure, of course. But there is a cost associated with recruiting patients.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so recruiting patients is one activity that sites don't get paid for. Answering emails is another.
Sure.
Being with the monitors for monitoring.
You could argue you do get paid for answering emails, kind of though too, because for each visit on a budget, they give you a coordinator fee and a PI fee, right? So that could
For each visit.
For each visit, right? So,
but that's supposed to be the fee for that coordinator for that visit for that day.
I think that is inclusive of answering emails in terms of.
But what if they're emails about regulatory?
Yeah.
Many times they are.
Sure, and you can include regulatory in that. There's no line item for regulatory.
What about when they do their teleconferences that you have to attend?
Sure, nothing for that either.
So is this all getting paid out of your overhead? Because if that's the case, everyone's overhead should start at 40.
Yeah, it should start at 70.
If that's the case, right?
Sure.
I mean, Dr. Kingsley said 90% of the work sites do goes unpaid.
Sure.
Being with monitors for monitoring visit.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean...
But I've recently started asking for a fee for that.
I saw that. I saw that in the budget.
Outside.
I saw that in the budget as I was doing the projections.
But I've only been paid twice for that. I've only had two sponsors agree on it.
Is that built into the budget? Like a line item?
No.
Like a coordinator fee, or you have to bill for that?
No, it's an invoiceable.
So who's billing for that? You?
Yeah, you just have to go through and for me, I would wait until the end of the study.
You would batch it at the end.
Right, and okay, how many days worth of monitor on site? You have in the regulatory budget, which shows
So it'd be like another closeout visit, like another part of the
Sure.
closeout payment.
Yep.
I got it. I noticed that. And I thought, hey,
Most
that's
don't
something
agree.
new.
Yeah, most don't agree though.
Right.
They
But
say-
every now and then they do.
They say this is the cost of doing business.
Right. And we got into a big debate, interesting banter at the summit with Dr.
More
Kingsley.
banter.
Yeah. But interesting banter on this topic.
Mhm.
You know, sites, other than the patients, the sites are the most critical component to a clinical research study. Alright, it's patients first, then sites, then sponsor. CROs are not critical. You don't need them.
Sure.
So there's this whole argument that sites should get paid based on the quality of the work they do. And the better sites should get paid more than the mediocre sites, which sounds great, but there's some issues there.
Well,
with the Sunshine Act.
yeah, but
Because then you can argue that a pharma company is playing favoritism on
kick that
certain key opinion leaders.
Sure, but even kick that aside, right? The Sunshine Act. What is important to a sponsor? Is it enrollment or is it clean data? So I would argue
both.
Enrollment's more important.
Both.
But I would say enrollment's more important. So are they going to pay you more for the more patients you enroll? Because some sponsors actually do that.
Mm-hmm. You think getting the data faster is valuable to them or no?
Yeah.
Like instead of entering the data like a week into the EDC after the visit, you do it in a day.
Sure.
You think they should pay a premium for that?
I don't think I would.
I don't think I would either, but that's his argument.
Sure, but I don't think I would.
And I understand why that's his argument, because he stands to benefit from it.
Sure.
Because he runs his clinics like, I mean, those are well-run organizations.
But his argument is from his perspective.
Of course.
You have to
I'm looking at this like you are from a holistic.
To have a valid argument, you have to argue from your I'm trying to think of, they're not your enemy, but your counterpart's perspective, right?
The other stakeholders.
Right, and from their perspective, what's most important is get the study over and done with it, right?
Right.
If you can.
So the number one barrier to that is patient recruitment.
Yeah.
So no matter whether it's bad data or good data, quality. I'm not talking about fraud here.
Well, bad data, if you can't use it, obviously that doesn't work.
Okay, bad data is out of the window, but like, let's say low quality study, like
Sure.
a piece of data that has been queried 10 times,
Sure.
but is finally resolved.
Right.
Now you can argue that costs a lot of man hours for that CRA,
It costs money.
right? So should they reward sites for
No,
reducing those inefficiencies?
of course not.
That's the argument.
So
Or is that their cost of doing business as the sponsor
I'm
of the
sure
CRO?
I'm sure that's the way it's looked at right now.
Their cost of doing business.
Sure, and
Just like sites have our cost of doing business.
but they do track those metrics, so they know sites that are very difficult to work with, that are very expensive to work with, right? Because they require a lot of man hours to oversee.
Yeah, but he brought this thing up about tracking metrics, and every sponsor is different in what they track.
Mhm.
And sometimes sites get penalized for things that are out of their control. For example, he brought up the case of study startup. One of the things they track is how quickly you go from SIV to screening, or how quickly you go from startup regulatory till SIV. Now sometimes, and he argues, good argument, many times, the issues are with the vendors and not his site,
Oh, I
and the delays.
wholeheartedly agree with that.
So, but at the end of the day, when they track those metrics,
Sure.
it still comes down to
I mean,
to being perceived as it's a bad metric for that site.
I'm sure this is a bad metric on a site. One of our clients, I recently finished negotiating a budget for them. So from time of being awarded the study, which was in February, to time budget and contract negotiation was completed, was 6 months later. 6 months.
And that's going to reflect poorly on the site.
And I handled this, right? Guess how many emails I had with the person I was negotiating with? 2. And they were no more than 2 days later. So he would send me an email, I'd respond within 2 days, twice, and it took 6 months. So unfortunately, it's all on the person that I was...
And that was the CRO.
Right, all on the person I was negotiating with.
But that metric, if that sponsor's tracking on that site, they're going to show 6 months of negotiations when really
it was
you
less
did
than
it in a day.
Less than a week.
So those kind of things.
Yep.
Right? Or if an IP gets held up at the border, right, because the customs officials haven't cleared it.
Sure.
Right? This is for the foreign sponsors that send IP. And now your patients are out of window. That deviation goes on the site, even though it has nothing to do with the site.
Oh, yep.
Right? So he brought up those 2 examples. You brought up a really good one. So what do we do as sites?
There's nothing you can do.
Well, do you believe in doing what he's doing, which is going on a conference tour and
Promoting his issues.
promoting these issues. I mean, someone's got to do it.
Sure. I think
DSCS should do that.
I think it's going to fall on deaf ears, but
Because what do you need for that to be successful? You need the audience of sponsors to pay attention. First, you got to show them the value. Why would they even care?
yes, that's first and foremost.
And what you're saying is all they care about is enrollment.
Yeah, they care about getting the study started and ended.
Whether it's great quality data or mediocre.
As long as it's acceptable to the FDA, that's all they care about.
Yeah. So, whether a piece of data has been queried 20 times or 0 times because it's perfect,
Right.
they're willing to pay fair market value for that.
Well, so here's your hypothetical, right? So if you were to hire all these perfect sites that aren't great at enrollment, right, but perfect with the data, let's say that doubles your timeline of completing the study from 3 months to 6 months. And supposedly it costs $1 million a day to run a typical study, right? So 3 months, that's roughly 90 million. Is it worth that 90 million to them?
It could be. It's debatable.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I know if I were the owner of that sponsor, no, it's not.
Right. So, should he stop doing this?
I mean, it sounds like
He's got some vested interest in this coming to fruition.
Sure, he's promoting his sites. He thinks he's very good at what he does.
And he
In regards
most
to
likely
data,
is.
in regards to collecting data.
He's a PI that only does research,
So
but has built networks with referring physicians.
I think if he really wants to be heard, he also needs to be like the top enroller, like every study.
I think they are.
And then he might be heard.
I think he has been getting heard, but it's the difference between getting heard and then getting action.
Yeah, good luck.
Because they're still on the fair market value. Pharma, when I say they, are still on the fair market value thing. They're not on the pay for
Sure,
performance.
That's just a ploy.
What do you think about fair market value?
It's just a ploy. It's a way to keep costs down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, how in any way are they incentivized, right? If they can find, so I don't know what, this guy's in Georgia, you said?
Yeah.
So he's in Georgia.
Dr. Kingsley.
Okay, so they said to Dr. Kingsley, you know what, it might take us 3 sites to replace what you do, but trust me, we have those 3 sites waiting. And they do. So again, how are they incentivized? I don't think they are.
Mm-hmm. My argument is, it's a well-known fact that many sites don't negotiate anything with the budget.
Sure.
And we see this with our clients. They're so happy they get a study, they're willing to sign the contract the minute it comes in.
Sure.
And then they don't want to negotiate because out of fear of losing the study.
Right.
Which we need to do a better job through this podcast, through these videos, through our Clinicon conference,
Mm-hmm.
through webinars, through our consulting. We just need to get the word out that, look, if everyone negotiates their budget, period. You don't have to negotiate well. Just start by negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
Start with overhead. It's the easiest thing.
Sure.
If everyone can do that, what you end up doing is raising the fair market value.
Yes, you do.
For everyone. For the industry. The sites benefit.
Yep.
And I think DSCS, I know there's a group called Society of Clinical Research Sites. They were actually at the summit too. But I think we can do that as we grow, or as our company grows. We can turn into what they do. Because they're supposed to be site advocates. Okay. They have a lot of sites in their network that they're not getting studies for. Like, they're not as involved as we are with our sites.
Sure.
But they advocate for them. Not even that. They're just advocating for better payment terms for sites, like industry-wide changes.
Sounds like Dr. Kingsley has a alliance he needs to make.
I think he's a member, but yeah, I mean, he's like on his own warpath with this.
Fair enough.
Hats off to him. I even told him personally there, like, if you can pull this off, that's great, but I'm less ambitious, I'm more practical. I think let's just get everyone who's watching or listening to start negotiating.
Yeah.
That's a huge first step.
Sure.
Alright? Now, you won't be rewarded if you're a great site. You'll be rewarded by getting more studies than the bad sites, you would think.
I would think so, yes.
But if they're also able to recruit, you can't call them a bad site. Even if they are.
They have half the problem, more than half the problem solved.
So they're truly not a bad site if they're recruiting.
Yep.
They're a bad site if they're not recruiting.
Or they're a bad site if they're only getting, if they're supposed to get 10 patients and they get 1 or 2 and the data's horrible. Or not horrible, it's usable, but it's slow and requires a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not a great site, they're probably not going to get a lot of studies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it.
I don't think so. You said you wanted to talk about overhead.
Didn't we just talk about overhead?
You
listed
like 4 things.
Negotiate your overhead. Start with that.
There was 4 things you listed.
Overhead, fair market value.
I don't remember anything yet. All I remember was overhead.
Pay
It was
for
like 4
service.
things.
Pay for service. Site metrics.
I don't think that was the 4 things,
Okay.
but okay.
That's good. We can title this the things that sites do that don't what should we title this?
Well, first question I have is, did we make it clear to our client who asked what overhead is? Did we make it clear how that
I don't
works?
think you did. Do it again. What's overhead?
Well, no, overhead's simple, alright? I'm sure I was clear on that.
Engage in this banter.
But, yeah, right. Overhead's not something you invoice for. It's something that's calculated into each study visit, right? It's part of your payment for the visit, right? It's associated costs with performing that visit.
Yes.
Right?
Like rent,
Electricity,
office supplies,
paper, toner,
toilet paper,
whatever.
lab supplies.
Right, yeah. Ink for pens,
Mm-hmm.
Post-it notes, it's just everything involved with conducting that visit.
Administrative staff. The only thing you get paid for is coordinator fee and PI fee.
True.
You don't get it. What if you have a receptionist picking up phones?
Sure.
That's overhead.
Oh, phone line, that's overhead. Internet.
A lot of overhead. Recruiters.
Sure.
Like you said, patient recruitment goes unpaid.
So all of that's calculated into overhead, and overhead is calculated into the visit.
If you want an overhead policy, email me and I'll get you one. Or find me on Instagram. Or come to our CliniCon 2019 conference. Go check out the Kickstarter links underneath this in the show notes. Or if you're watching on YouTube, underneath the video. Kickstarter link. Get massive discounts and get plenty of perks.
I'm trying to remember the 4 items. I'm sure we didn't cover that, but okay, that's fine.
Well, that will be for 197.
There you
I
go.
think it was good. A good banter.
All right.
Talk to y'all later. Take care.